TCU is on the road at Texas Tech. The home team Red Raiders are actually 3-point favorites. I had to double check that one to make sure I was getting it right. Kind of a surprising line, maybe. We'll dive into it. And this game has an over-under of 59.5 points. It kicks off Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern on FS1. Texas Tech quarterback Baron Morton, he's questionable for the game, a little bit dinged up. Tech is coming off of not a full bye because they're playing on Thursday, but he's had some extra time to rest and recover and hopefully get out there. He has not been great. He's not been bad, but he's not been great. 57% completion, 5 turnover-worthy throws, but 8 touchdowns, only 2 picks. He did take over Week 4 as a starter when Tyler Shuck went down like he did last year, and this is just a third year in a row, I think, for Texas Tech where they're dealing with a lot of injuries to their quarterback room. Running back Taj Brooks, he's been the engine for this offense so far. He's gone over 100 yards in 5 of his last 6 games. The only time that he didn't is when he went for 98 yards against Kansas State, and come on, guys, couldn't we give him one more carry to break the 100? He's also scored in 4 straight games on the ground. He goes against the TCU defense that just gave up in their last game 343 yards on the ground to Kansas State in that prolific rushing offense. Only Arkansas nationally has given up more 20-plus yard plays this year than TCU. I think we're far enough away from that wild back-and-forth Colorado game to know that it's no longer an anomaly, it's no longer skewed. They just give up explosive plays. That's just what this TCU defense does. But a big deal for the Horned Frogs. Linebacker Johnny Hodges is expected to return. He did return to practice this week. He's their defensive captain. He's their best run stopper by far. Without him, this defense is absolutely not the same. And I'm not going to say he would have held Kansas State to 150 yards, but him being out was a big reason why Kansas State was able to go for almost 350. TCU, though, as a team, incredibly inconsistent. Almost without any exception, they just beat really bad teams and then lose to everybody else. SMU may be an exception, but SMU's improved a lot. And to be honest, if that game was played again today, I don't know how it would go, even in Fort Worth. But of course, that's playing the what-if game. There are other wins on their slate: Houston, BYU, and Nichols. So not exactly a murderer's row of wins. I'm interested what the resume rankings would be in your estimation. Really quick, quarterback Josh Hoover had a big game in his starting debut against BYU, but he's thrown the ball 101 times in 2 games, and to me, that's absolutely unacceptable. What are we doing, guys? It results in a big win over BYU. That's fine, but then you got crushed 41-3 to Kansas State, and I'm not saying it's a negative game strip, so of course you're going to throw the ball more, but run the ball a little bit, will you? Your offense wasn't getting anything going. You have this new guy coming in, throwing way too many times. He's also pressured 17 times against Kansas State. Texas Tech, pretty decent pass rush made up of veterans and transfers. And the wide receivers for Hoover have 9 drops in 2.5 games. That will happen when you change quarterbacks, but it's not like you change it handedness. So the receivers need to pick it up.
Brett, just to answer your question, TCU number 53 and the most deserving, Texas Tech number 55. So both these teams sitting in the 50s with regard to deservedness, which, if it puts it in perspective, they're actually both behind 2-6 Arkansas, who's at number 51.
Oh, no.
So it's not great from that regard. But, Brett, this game has a watchability score of 8.2. It's a top 10 game of the week for me, and I agree with you. This could be, one of, if not the best, midweek slates of games we've had since that extended week 1, which, as you said, is kind of its own thing and doesn't really count because of how they kind of schedule week 1 every single year. I have this game as a pick'em. It's a 51% win expectancy for Texas Tech. There is no denying it. And I kind of touched on it with the most deserving rankings, though. Both these teams are having really terribly disappointing seasons. In the preseason, my numbers gave TCU a 95% chance to go bowling. Texas Tech had an 88% chance to win 6 games. Now, Brett, TCU's chances are down to just 59%. Texas Tech all the way down to just 17% chance to go bowling. At 4-4, TCU has 2.1 fewer wins than my preseason realistic expectations projected through week 9. And at 3-5, Texas Tech has 2.3 fewer wins than projected. Both of these, Brett, rank in the bottom 10 in all of FBS with regard to achievement with win-loss record relative to expected in the preseason. So both these teams' offenses are at season lows right now, Brett. TCU at 34, Texas Tech at 41. The defense is ranked number 38 and number 42, respectively. So that's how you're getting a pick 'em here. These units are pretty comparable on both sides. And the reason it has a decent watchability score, 8.2, I'd say that's better than decent, is because these are still quality teams, even if their records aren't necessarily reflecting that. So by my numbers, TCU is the slightly better team. They have the slight advantage on both sides of the ball, but they still end up with just a 49% win expectancy because this game is in Lubbock. So that home field, to me, is what could end up making the difference in this game. And in my opinion, maybe why we've got the line that we do here from Vegas. Both these teams were off last week, and this is a big swing game with regard to bowl eligibility, Brett. So I expect both sides really to be pulling out all the stops in this one. Bottom line, I have this game as a pick'em with the smallest of leans towards the Red Raiders at home.
Yeah, you won't catch me laying the points with Texas Tech at home, that's for sure. And honestly, I don't know if I'm taking the points with TCU either. They're just too darn inconsistent. I don't trust their offensive play calling. I don't trust their offense, but Texas Tech is the less healthy team. And just, like you said, TCU is probably the better team. But do I trust them to go into Lubbock, which by all accounts is a very, very difficult place to play. And this is a rivalry. It is. It may not be the biggest rivalry, but it sure is one. So I went with a play on the total. I'm actually going to play under 59.5 points in this game. I don't believe in either offense, or at least their ability to be all that consistent. And despite running the third fastest offense in the country, TCU, they're only 54th in points per drive and 47th in success rate. That just tells you the inconsistencies there. TCU has also been held to 21 or fewer points in 3 of their last 4 when they played competent defenses, BYU being the lone exception to that. So this offense also isn't getting going, and that was with Chandler Morris and Josh Hoover. So I've seen both sides. Texas Tech has the 3rd most turnovers in the country in their last 3 games. They get stuffed by any defense that has a slight pulse. BYU, they only just scored 14 points against them. That's not a good look. They only scored 21 against Kansas State and 13 against West Virginia. So this feels like it's priced like they're expecting this old school Big 12 shootout, and they looked at the pace and said, wow, these offenses like to run fast, which they do, but they're not very successful at it. So I don't believe that's what we have on here. Under 59.5 points is the play for me.